Daf Yomi is Sanhedrin Nunvav, Sanhedrin 56. Today's Daf Yomi is dedicated for a Shmir for the Chayalim, Hatzal for the Shvuyim, and the Yeshua for Am Yisrael and the Seis Tzara. And today's Daf Yomi will start on the bottom of 55b at the Mishnah. Says the Mishnah, Megadev. So Megadev is somebody who is Mekawel, the name of God, Mekawel Hashem. But we don't speak like that. So we say Mevarech. The Mishnah is going to refer to it as Birkas Hashem. The Gemara is going to refer to it as Birkas Hashem. So one who is in the morning Hobbs, we're in the bottom of 55b, 55b at the bottom. So we said the Megadev, so the one who is Mevarech Hashem, Eino Chayev, he's not going to be liable, Achi Farish, until he actually mentions the name. And Amar Yeshua Ben Karcha, top of 56a, the whole yom danin es ha'edim bekinoi. Now the word kinoi with respect to God's name can mean like another name of God. For example, one of the names that are not erased, one of the names of the Torah that are not erased, like Shakai or Tzvakos. But here it doesn't mean that way. Here it means we speak about God's name. The witnesses, when they say that what this person did, they don't say directly the name of God, but they just are referring to it euphemistically. Basically, they say not even one of the names of God. They just say Yake Yosi es Yosi. They say this person said that Yosi should strike Yosi. Now, Yosi is she says, is a substitute for even a nickname of God because it has the same amount of letters and it has similar letters. And also Rashi says it's the cheshbon, it's the numerical value of Elokim. And therefore, that's the word that's chosen. Nigmar adin, once the case has been decided this person is guilty, however, well, hargim bekinoi. We don't execute the defendant or the convicted person on the basis of this substituted name, Elamotzi and Kol Adam L'chutz. We take everybody outside and showing us like Gadol Shebeneim. We ask the senior witness, the Omer, well, when we say to him, Amor Masha Shamata Beferish, say explicitly what you heard. V'hu Omer, and he says explicitly what we heard. Madayanan Omdin Araglain, and the judges stand up, the Koran, and they tear their garment because in effect they've done something wrong also by hearing the name of God in this disrespectful manner. And they never tear their garments. This is like a real mourning. And normally, even though the second witness would have to say exactly like the first witness said, here it's sufficient for him to just say, I say just like him. And the third one says, I say just like him as well. Tana, so it was taught, Achi Varech Shem B'Shem, that you're only liable for being Mevarech Hashem if you say the name with the name, like Yake Yosi es Yosi, may Yosi strike Yosi. That's the only way there's liability. You have to use that formula. Menani Mili, what's the source for this? Amar Shmuel, Amar Krav, Benokev Shem. It says in the pasuk, Benokev Shem Hashem Mosi Mas Ragom Yergamu Bo Ko Aida V'Ger Le'Ezrach Binakfo Shem Yimas. So take a step back. That there are two passages that refer to this sin of being the Varech Hashem. One is the person who is called the Mekalel, and that is in Parashas Amor, and he is the one who is he's Mekalel Hashem, and so then they adjudicate the matter, and Moshe says after asking God, he's put to death. Then there's another pasuk that says Elokim lo sikalel, which normally, if you look at Rashi and Chumash, is a reference to you're not allowed to curse judges. But our Gemara is going to also say it refers to cursing, to being the shame. So here we're saying that what's the idea that you have to be no cave shame b'shame? It comes from this pasuk where it says no cave shame b'nokfo shame you must. So the Gemara asks the question: how do we know that no cave means to be mekalel? No cave wishing to beruchayu. How do we know that nokev is an expression of bracha? Here, bracha means kol, but we have to explain what the euphemism is. How do we know that nokev is an expression of bracha? Dechsev. So as Gemara says from what Bilam said, the curse of Bilam, ma'akov lo kavael. I can't curse if God didn't curse. The Gemara says, then what's the asar? Anytime you have a punishment, you have to have a warning beforehand. Me'azara me'acha Elokim lo sikalel. That it means Elokim lo sikalel. That God you cannot curse. So the Gemara says ve'ema mibrasu dichsiv. Maybe it means maybe ve'ema mibrasu. Maybe it just means that you're not allowed to like take a knife and stab the shame. Gemara says no. Dichsiv vayikov because it says dichsiv vayikov chor b'doaso. So maybe it just refers to stabbing, not being Mikalo. The Gemara says no, but shame b'shame v'leka. No, in that case, you wouldn't have a shame b'shame. You're just stabbing with a knife. That's not shame b'shame, like Yake Yosi es Yosi. So the Gemara says, "Ve'ema de manach shnei shemos adad." Well, maybe we're talking about a case where you put the two names on top of each other, ubazalu, and you stab them. Gemara says, no, no cave b'chozer nocham. Those are two separate piercings. It's not no cave shame b'shame. Ve'ema dechayik shema puma desakina. Well, maybe you put one name on the edge of the knife. Ubaza bahu korfa ubazaba. So Gemara says, and maybe you just took the name on one edge of the knife and you pierced through the other one. Gemara says, no. No, there it's not no cave shame b'shame. There it's the edge of the knife that's piercing it. Gemara says, but ema, maybe the word no cave does not mean be Mikao. Maybe it means Perusha Shmei. Maybe it means to actually just say the name out loud, or maybe to explain the hidden meaning of the name. We know that there was a lot of mysticism associated with the name, that when the name was said on Yom Kippur, everybody bowed down and shouted out, Baruch Shem Kol Machusol, so nobody would hear exactly how it's pronounced. Maybe that's all it means here. Maybe that's what no cave shame means, to be Mefarish name. Moshe gathered the 70 elders and they got some of his nevuah. It says Asher nikfu b'shemos. And where would be there an ashara about it? So you're not supposed to say the name out loud. It says, first of all, we're going to reject it. You don't have shame b'shem there either. And second, I say that warning is a positive thing. You should fear God. Mazaras Hasei lo shema Azara. And Mazaras Hasei is not considered an Azara. Excuse me. Gemara says V'bayasema, or alternatively, how do we know that it says that V'bayasema, says the Gemara, alternatively, how do we know that no cave means Mikalo? Because it says Vayikov, it says in the pasuk, it says, hold on one second. It says Vayikov ben Aisha Yisraelis, that this is what he did, and then it says Vayikalel. So we see that he did that. It's a parallel. Vayikov and Vayikalel are parallel words. Remember the Nukov Kolahu that tell us that no cave means to be Mikalo. Gemara says V'dilma Ada Avitravel. No, maybe it means that maybe all that pasuk is saying you need both. You need to say the name aloud and to be Mikalo. Gemara says no. No, no one says two separate things. When it says Otsei as a Mikalel, it says take out the one who is Mikalel and execute and stone him. It doesn't say take out the one with no cave and Mikalel. So Shema Minachadi. So we see no cave and Mikalel are the same thing. The Tana Rabbanan, so the Gemara says, well, let's talk about this person who was Mikalel, this Ish ki Kalel Elokav b'nasachato. Let's talk about this man who was Mikalel. No, Matam Omer Ish. Why does it say Ish? Rabo says Obde Kochavim. So Gemara is going to go on a little bit of a tangent to say that idolaters are included in the sin of Birkas Hashem. And then this is going to lead us into the discussion in the Shas of the 7 mitzvahs b'nei Noach. So first we have this idea that the idolaters are included in this commandment. It says, so all the Kochavim idolaters are commanded not to be Mevarach Hashem. Shem Musar al Birkas Hashem Kisrael. But a Jew who does the Birkas Hashem is stoned, but the idolater is killed with a sayef, the decapitation. So that they are stoned. Anytime there's a death by the idolaters, they're not stoned, they are decapitated. So the Gemara says, is this the source that idolaters included? There's another source for it, and this is going to be the source for the 7 Noahide laws, because it says, and so that's the pasuk from Mauritius. That's the source of the Noahide laws, and there it says Hashem in the Brisa, which we'll see on the Mabez. It says Zu Berkas Hashem, and this refers to cursing God, to be Mevarach Hashem. So the source is not ish to include idolaters. It says Vayitzav Hashem. So Amar Rabbi Yitzchak Nafo Nitzracha El Rabbo Es Hakinuyin. So Valiba Rabbi Meir. So he says this pasuk of ish is to tell us that the idolaters are included in also the kinuyin of Hashem. And here kinuyin does not mean like it meant in the Mishnah on the top. Here kinuyin means the other names of God that are not the ones that you're directly chayav for Birkas Hashem. But there are other names that are associated. They are names that are typically, they are called the Shemos She'ina Nimchakin, the names that cannot be erased. So those names are included in this. Maliba de Rabbi Meir, and it follows the position of Rabbi Meir. The Tanya ish ki yikal elokav b'nasachato. Why does it say matam or why does it say man who curses his God and carries his sin? So why does it have to repeat it? I might think you're only liable for the name itself. And how do I know that all the other names of God are also included? So therefore, this pasuk tells us Divrei Rabbi Meir. And so therefore, Rabbi Meir says you're going to be liable for also the kinuyav. And so therefore, we see from the fact it says ish ki yikalel Elokav, and so therefore we're going to say that Rabbi Meir was after that pasuk. Whereas the Chachamim say no, for the kinuyin you're not chayav misa. The kinuyin are just a regular prohibition, a lav. The name itself you're liable for death, but the kinuyin it's just a lav. Upigi de Rabbi Maisha, and this position of the Chachamim, or wait 1 second. And this position argues with Rabbi Maisha. Rabbi Yitzchak Nafo, who says that according to Rabbanan, a ben Noach is not killed for the kinuyim, argues with Rabbi Maisha's position of the Rabbanan. The Amar Rabbi Maisha, ben Noach shabirachas Hashem b'kinuyim, Rabbanan chayev. He says according to the Rabbanan, if a ben Noach curses God with the kinuy, he's liable for death. My time, Amar Grak, ger kezrach. It says in the pasuk that this is a penalty that applies to ger and kezrach. Ger ve'ezrach hu dibainan b'nakvo shame. They're the ones who are required of ovid kochavim afil b'kinoi. So according to the Rabbanan, it says Rabbi Maisha that the ger and the ezrach amongst us, that's only they are, in order to be put to death, they require the shame itself. But the idolater is even a kinoi. Rabbi Meir, hi ger kezrach ma'avol. So what does Rabbi Meir do with that pasuk of ger kezrach? Says ger ve'ezrach b'skilu have all the claim Messiah. He says that it means that there's a different penalty. The Jew gets skila and the idolater gets sayif. Salkadai techamina hol v'srabu. You might have thought to get the same penalty. Kamash we don't. Rabbi Yitzchak Nafcha liva the Rabbanan, who say that according to Rabbi Yitzchak Nafcha, who says that the Rabbanan say it's just a lav for a kinoi for the idolaters. So according to them, haike ger kezrach ma'avoi says it's to teach us ger ve'ezrach hu d'bein and shame b'shame. That the idolaters don't require shame b'shame like Yaka Yosi es Yosi. So therefore, the Gemara says, "And ish lamali." And according to Rabbi Yitzchak Nafcha, what does he do with the words ish? According to the Rabbanan, when it says ish, what do we need it for? Meaning to say, since we're going to say the prohibition of Birkas Hashem, you don't need to compare Ben Noach to Israel because we're learning it out from Vayitzav Hashem. So what do they do with the words ish? So they say Dibra Torah Kolashim B'nei Adam. That's not to teach us anything. That's just Dibra Torah Kolashim B'nei Adam. That's the Torah is speaking in that manner. Hold on 1 second. So now we go to the bottom of the page. So now the Gemara is going to go into a discussion of the 7 Noahide laws. The Noahides are commanded to observe 7 basic laws. Dinan Birkas Dinan means civil cases. So the Rambam says it's to enforce the other 6 Noahides, but Ramban says it's to basically do all of civil law. So when you think about it, the Sefer Chinuch says these are 7 overarching categories, and not 7 discrete commandments. So really, they have basically most of Nezikin. Birkas Hashem, that we've been discussing, and Avodah Zarah, we have a lot of Kodshim, Gili Arayos, a lot of Noshim, adultery, V'shvichos Damim, Okay, so this is also included in the zikun. It's murder. Gazel is theft. Aver minachai, ripping the limb off of a living animal. Rabbi Chanina ben Gamla Omer on top of Nun Vavam Beis, he says Afal Adam minachai. Also, this prohibition against blood from a living animal. So that's 8. Rabbi Chidka Omer Afal Asirus, that you're not allowed to sterilize a human or an animal. And Rabbi Shimon Omer Afal Akishaf, also for sorcery. So the idolaters are commanding all these laws. And Rabbi Yossi says, Koa Omer Parshas Kishaf Benoch Mizarlav. Anything that's mentioned with the passage of Kishaf of sorcery, a Ben Noach is commanded on it. Meaning, so it's many more than 7. So as it states in the pasuk, you cannot pass your son or his daughter in a fire, kosem kesamim, meaning not only on Makashef, but rather in all these other categories, the kosem, the monim, and nachashes, are all people who are using sorcery, even though they might not be technically speaking within Kishuv. And so how do we know that the Ben Noach is included in them? Because it says, immediately after these are listed, it says, as a result of these abominable acts, God will exile them from before you. Meaning to say, they're being punished because they did these actions. And so therefore, the lo anash on kin his here. If they can't be punished unless they were initially warned. And so therefore, it's obviously the case that they're prohibited to do this. And so therefore, they're warned about this. Rebbe Lazar says another area. He says afal klayim. The idolaters are also warned not to do a mixture. Af ala klayim, and he says. So what does it mean when he says that they're not allowed to do this prohibited mixture? They're allowed to wear the klayim, i.e. the wool and the linen, and also Israel klayim, to plant 2 seeds together. But ein asurin ela ba'harbas behema uba'har kavas ilan. They're only going to be prohibited to mate 2 different species and also to graft 2 different trees together. Mena and Emili. So the Gemara says, what's the source for the idea of the 7 Noahide laws? So it's going to be a verse that wasn't intuitive. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, the Amar Kra, it says in the pasuk in chapter 2 of Genesis, God commanded Adam, from everything in the Garden of Eden you shall eat. So let's go through this pasuk. When it says he commanded, according to Rabbi Yochanan, that refers to Elo Adinin, that refers to Dinin, civil laws. So tzedakah mishpat. So we see that this refers to Dinin, and Hashem that refers to Birkas Hashem. That refers to what we've been talking about on the first Amud, the idea of Birkas Hashem. So it states, whoever is no cave Shem Hashem will be put to death. Elohim, when it says Elohim, Hashem Elohim, this refers to avodas kochal, and this refers to idolatry. Elohim acherim. That's our parsha. And what is the next one? Ala Adam, that refers to shvichus dam, and that's the prohibition of murder. Shofech dam Adam, one who spills the blood of another. And Lamor, that refers to adultery. Zugil Yarayis. Omer, Lamor is from Jeremiah. Man sends away his wife, and she leaves him, and she goes to be with another man. And Mikol Eitzagan, from every tree in the garden you could eat, but you can't steal. It wasn't a commandment. The commentaries discuss. Was it an actual mitzvah to eat from that tree? Was it an initial mitzvah for Adam and Eve to eat from that tree? Achol tochel, that you can eat below Aver Minachai, but not a limb from a living animal. Kiasa Rabbi Yitzchak Tani Ifcha. Rabbi Yitzchak, he taught this the following way, the opposite way. Veitzav, that refers to avodas kochavim. It doesn't refer to Birkas Hashem. That refers to Veitzav does not refer to dinim, but refers to prohibition of idolatry. Elohim here means dinin, like we say Nasiba Elohim Sikawel. Bishlam Elohim Zudinin. I understand why Elohim can refer to courts, because it says in the pasuk, "V'nikrav balabayis Elo Elohim," because it says in the pasuk in Parashas Mishpatim that you shall come to the court. So we know that Elohim can sometimes mean the court. But how can Vayitzav be idolatry? Because it says, that they quickly departed from the path that they were commanded, and they made for them a golden calf. So we see Vayitzav can refer to idolatry. Another one says that what's the source for this idea that Vayitzav means idolatry? From the verse in Hosea, Ashuk Ephraim Ritzutz Mishpat Ki Ochil Halach Achrei Tzav, meaning to say that Israel, which is into by Ephraim, they are corrupt with their money from their enemies, and they are rebuked through the judgment of God because they wanted to go after the commands of the prophets of Baal. And so we see Tzav hints to following after idolatry. So my Binaya, what's the distinction between the two verses? Is it Saru Maher or Ashuk Ephraim? So Ika Binaya, Akum Sha'asa Avodah Ishtachavalah. Let's say in the first verse they did the idolatry, but they did not bow down to it. So therefore, let's say an idolater makes the idolatry, but is not yet bound down. According to one, it says Asuam Egel Masecha, that they made a golden calf, that they did it, but they didn't bow down. Mishas Asiya, from the moment they did it, Mechayev, they're liable. Nanda Amar Ki Hokil Halach, they went after the Tzav, Ada Azo Basar Palcha. It means to say they're only liable once they start to worship it. So Rava's bothered by the fact that an idolater can be liable just for making the idolatry, even before they worship it. Says Rava, is there anybody who's on the position, an idolater who does idolatry, but who makes an idol, but has not yet bowed down to his liable? But we learned in the Brisa, and these are the things that a Jewish court puts the idolater to death. Those things which a Jewish court puts the idolater to death. Those things that a court puts a Jew to death, if a Jew does it, then the Noahide is warned not to do. But if the court does not put the Jew to death for it, then then the Ben Noach is not even warned about them, and they're allowed to do that. Meaning to say there are certain things that the Jew is not allowed to do, but it's not a death penalty. And whereas the Ben Noach is not even warned about those things. What's it coming to exclude? It's coming to exclude idolater who did the idolatry but did not bow down to it. So therefore, we see from here that the idolater is allowed to make the idol, or they're not liable if they made the idol but they didn't bow down to it. Rav Papa, no, it's lemute hipuf v'nishach. It's to exclude embracing and kissing the idol, that it's not worshiping it, so that the idolater is allowed. Hipuf v'nishach demai. What does it mean, embracing and kissing it? Ilema kedarka. If you want to say that this is the way of worship, barkatlo, he should be killed. El lemute shelo kedarka. So it's to exclude embracing and kissing it in a manner that's not worshiping it. I just want to say, pause for a moment. The idea that there's something that for a Jew is prohibited as it relates to idolatry, but the idolater is allowed to do, reminds me of the first Tosfos or the Tosfos on the first stop from Avodah Zarah, because he says, how are we allowed? It says that 3 days before their festivals, we're not allowed to do business with idolaters. So how are we allowed to do business? Tosfos says 3 days before, 3 days after, we can't do business with them. How are we allowed to trade with the Tosfos lived in Latin Christendom? How are we allowed to trade with our neighbors? They're worshiping idolatry because they believe in the Trinity. The Tosfos says that from their perspective, it's not idolatry. From our perspective, it's idolatry for us, but for them, it's not idolatry. That's one of the three answers Tosfos gives to that question. A very controversial answer, a lot to discuss about it, but God willing, we'll get to Avodah Zarah soon enough. Says the Gemara, we learned in the Brisa that one of the 7 Noahide laws is dinim. So now we have something which just relates to the parasha that we just read last week. Dinim b'nei Noach, if good, are the idolaters commanded to set up court system? Vatanya Eser mitzvos nistalev Yisrael b'Mara. Last week's parasha, the Jewish people came to Mara. It says in the Bride, so they were given 10 commandments there. Sheva shekiblu aleim b'nei Noach, 7 that the Noahites accepted. Vosifu aleim dinim v'Shabbos v'kivud avayim, and they added on to that dinim and Shabbos and honoring one's father. V'im dinan, and if it really is dinan, d'chsev sham some, dinan v'Shabbos v'kivud avayim. And how do we know that they were given dinan there? Because it says sham samuel choku mishpat. There they gave him laws and judgment, and Shabbos v'kivud avayim, because it says kasher tivcha Hashem elkecha, which it also says in this week's parsha. So we see that they were also commanded about Shabbos and honoring one's father and mother, even before. Now Shabbos, we know that they have to be there because they were commanded by the man not to collect on Shabbos. Kivud avayim. Why did they have to be commanded that at Mara? That's a different question. So that's a different question. And also Tosa says, what about Gid Anosha and the mitzvah of Milah? And so there's a whole discussion about that. And Pru Ravu. Anyway, we see from here Amar Yehuda Kasher. So it says that Amar Yehuda Kasher Tzipcha b'Mara, that they were commanded at Mara. So anyway, we see from here that that dinin is not part of the 7 mitzvahs b'nei Noach. Amar Barabua lo nitzcha ela le'eda v'le'edim v'asra. No, it's to teach us that Hashem commanded us at Mara, not the essence of din. And that was part of the 7 Noahide laws. But Hashem added on 3 specific laws. Eda, I mean to say that you need to have a court of 23. Edim, that means to say that you need 2 witnesses. And Asra, that the witnesses need to be warned. It should have said, why did it say they added on dinim? Meaning to say dinim were there. The things that they added on were just like accessories to dinim. So the Brisa should have said mitzvahs dinim, not dinin. And ela maravo nitzcha ela dine knasos. They added on the concept of knas, of like punitive damages. So akati yosifu bedinin mibala. It should have said not dinin, but bidinin. I mean to say that will imply that they were already commanded to judge it, and now they were adding on another aspect of it. Ela maravacha bar Yaakov nitzcha ela. Still, they were commanded to set up a court in every single town. Before they just needed one big court. Now every single village needs a judge. But the Noahides also have this commandment. Just like the Jews are commanded to set up a court in every town, so too the idolaters. So this Tana who was taught in Tana b'nei Menashe, this Tana of the second Brisa, he excluded from the 7 mitzvahs b'nei Noach the laws of dinim and birkas Hashem, and he included sach, and he included sirus and koyim, meaning to like Rebbe Chitka in the first brisa, and like Rebbe Lazar in the second brisa. And what other 7? Avodah Zarah, Gilui Arayah, Shuchas Tamim, Gezel, Aver Menachai, Sirus, and Koyim. And then at Mara, the Jewish people were given dinim, and so there it works well with that. Rabbi Yehuda says, Adam Arishal on its Tavel Avodah Zarah Bavad. He says, even though the Bnei Noach were commanded the 7 mitzvahs after the flood, nevertheless, Adam was only commanded about idolatry. It says, Vayitzav Hashem Elokim al Adam, meaning to say that Hashem was commanded to God. He shouldn't exchange it for somebody else. And Rabbi Yehuda and Beseira Omer, Af al Birkas Hashem, was also commanded at Birkas Hashem, because it says al Adam, that accepted it, and so he can't curse, he can't be Mavarach Hashem. Yeshomim al Af al Dinim, some say also on Dinim, because since he accepted Hashem to be his God and to judge him, so therefore he has to establish a court system. Kaman Azal Hadam Rav Yehuda Marav, like whom does it say? Vayitzav Hashem Elokim al Adam, that we should say that we have Elokim Ani, V'lo Tekaluni, V'lo Timeruni, and Elokim Ani Morai Alechem. Kaman So this idea that Rabbi Yehuda learns out from this pasuk that I am Hashem, don't curse me. I am Hashem, don't exchange me for idolatry. I am Hashem, you should have my fear upon me. This is like the Yesh Omim that is in the Brisa that says also on judges they were commanded. Adam himself was commanded. Okay, this is today's Geshmak. Beautiful daf. We'll stop here.